Thank you, Charlie. It's a pleasure to have you on XROM podcast, which is the first of its kind podcast from here in India. And it's a pleasure to talk to you because you're one of the most well-known, most well-respected, who's been fronting and evangelizing the ecosystem. Mr. Charlie Fink is an XR consultant, author, columnist, and adjunct faculty at Chapman University Film School, California. He has also produced, directed the award-winning feature film Door to Door, which I don't think anybody knows about that. Earlier, he's been part of.
Indeed, you're going back to like 1983,
right? And he's been part of companies such as Disney. He's been the executive vice president and chief operating officer of VR Pioneer Virtual World Entertainment, head of story development at Disney Feature Animation, senior vice president and chief creative officer of AOL Studio, and he has had successful exits from several startups and has produced over 30 Broadway and off-Broadway musicals. So awesome. So you're so background.
Another weird footnote to my crazy life.
Yeah, but how cool is that? So you're I mean, if you see your graph, you have spent the maximum amount of time in the creative business, right? So what was the shift from Broadway musical heading companies such as AOL and Disney, from there to virtual reality? What was the nudge that got you looking at virtual reality and nudging the ecosystem?
Well, that's a story that goes back to, after I left Disney, I went to work for Tim Disney, who was a member of the Disney family who was buying a game company called Virtual World Entertainment that was networking flight simulators together, but not, in the sky where it's really hard to see other people going by you at 600 miles an hour, but rather networking them together using a metaphor called vehicle-based or cab-based VR. So in 1992, imagine everybody is inside of a plywood game cabinet in which there's a, big video monitor, and that monitor is their quote unquote window out of their vehicle. And so the vehicle, initially was part of something called the BattleTech role-playing game universe. So it was giant robots battling, on desert planets, which were conveniently low polygon planets. And most of the data being transmitted between the pods was positional. Right, I'm over here. And so it minimized the latency and made the simulation possible. So Tim Disney invested in this company. They had a pilot operation in Chicago, which was wildly successful in the 90s. And we started to build them around the world. In fact, over the course of 4 years, we built over 30 on 4 continents. So that was quite a lot of simulation centers. Hundreds of the simulators were built. They were operated until 2006, I think, by Dave & Buster's. So I, was in charge of Virtual World, which Tim was the chairman. And, I transformed myself from a movie executive into kind of a retail/digital executive. And that was good enough for AOL, which was desperately looking for people out of the entertainment business to help them figure out their consumer, internet in the early 90s or mid 90s. So, which was really before the internet really started to scale, which was driven in the end largely by mobile phones. But at the time it was being driven by personal computers. And even by that standard, they were so expensive, it was kind of astonishing how quickly it grew. Setting that aside as kind of a digression, the virtual world experience was one of many lives that I led. So I went from virtual world to AOL. I left AOL. I started another company. I got involved with the arts, which was really my first love back at Disney before I ever got involved with, virtual reality or video games. And so at a certain point, I wanted to get back into tech, but it was really kind of too late for me. Nobody wants to hire a 55-year-old ex-CEO who hasn't been relevant in tech for 10 years. So, my option was not get back into tech, but I started writing about it. And interestingly, no one really cared about anything that I had to say about theater or the internet or marketing or any of that other stuff. But people really responded to what I had to say about virtual reality. And so, like any kind of social media where you get a dopamine fix, right? You get a positive response. I wrote about it again, and then I wrote about it again. And then the phone rang, and it was somebody who I had known 25 years earlier who was now a senior person at Forbes, who said, hey, come write about virtual reality for us. And that was, tremendously legitimizing. Forbes is like Disney. If you work for them, you are legitimized. So I became this sort of, business writer about XR. I'm not much of a technology guy, although I've learned far more than I ever thought I would know. But the past 6 years, it's been kind of an amazing ride. I have always thought that it was going to take longer than everybody else, although I don't think you get a prize for being right about something like that. But I also feel that we're reaching an inflection point now where, it's going to go from being a prosumer thing where the nerdiest of the nerds were doing it, people who were doing not only PC gaming, but, the more esoteric forms of gaming like virtual reality. So it's been, a long time coming. I'm glad I got in. I like to say I was there at the beginning, but it's still the beginning.
Yeah.
I took a 20-year vacation from VR and I came back and it was essentially the same, but we had something amazing going on with headsets, and it took a giant company like Facebook to really drive us into the next generation of mobile, which is the Oculus Quest. So it's super exciting to be here at this time.
Right. Yeah. You said, when you started maybe 20 years ago, and somehow you feel that it's still a nascent industry, because I believe that this technology is so transformational, and we just scratching the surface. Obviously, because we are vested in the space, that we do not understand how fast it's scaling. Even if you look back five years, when Oculus was just acquired by Facebook, at that point in time, the VR headset with the gear, the computer, everything.
Well, it's easy to go from 0 to 5,000.
Right. And at that point,
it's a lot longer to go from 5,000 to 10,000. The truth is, it's like, networks, right? The more people that are on the network, the more people who want to be on the network.
Right. Yeah. And there is something extremely transformational about this technology, because once it matures, you will be breaching or pushing the subject of what reality is. Even right now, in its most basic form, and with low polygon, and you understand the virtual world is bad animation. But even then,
there is no R in VR.
Yeah, it is still tricking your motor cortex into believing the virtual is real, and we're just scratching the surface. So I am excited because I am a storyteller. I'm a creative first. I spent 20 years playing for a rock band. And in 2016, I discovered VR. And then when Google was building their Odyssey rig, the 12 camera rig, we kind of open sourced the framework and built an 18 camera rig. We added top, bottom, and completely created a full 360 stereoscopic rig. I directed, produced India's first stereoscopic VR horror short film, figured out the minus points and the plus points of that camera, wanted to take it to market, but realized that there was no resources, the industry was not sustainable. So I decided to create a sustainable industry, and that's how I founded Immersion, India's first VR film festival and conference. And the reason I've been pushing this ecosystem from early 2015 is because I believe that in the next possibly 10 years or maybe beyond, each and every industry verticals is going to get completely transformed, because we are getting into the magical world where we are moving from our old traditional industries and old devices, not old, but maybe your personal computers and a mobile, into one single wearable device, which could, make the entire world into one big digital world where everything is going to be connected. So I am extremely, extremely excited for that world. And that's the reason whatever I've been doing, it's extremely difficult right now, because it gets very difficult to convince the non-believers or those enterprise who do not understand the potential of this. But I'm taking step, these small steps. So, the variety calls you the XR explainer in chief. So would you like to break down what XR is and its benefit for enterprise as well as individuals?
Well, XR really refers to a range of technologies, where X is the variable and R is the reality that doesn't exist. But it's really about the relationship of technology to reality. So XR is VR, AR, wearables, hearables, bioware or wetware, and technologies yet to be invented, which augment the human. And I would argue, of course, that glasses, which is a technology I see you're using as well, that's been around for 400 years. And of course, we have smartphones, which also augment us. So, the definitions of virtual reality, for example, virtual reality certainly generally means a fully occluded digital world, but could it not also include Disneyland, which was, Walt Disney, an artist or an entrepreneur, realizing that people wanted to walk around inside of a movie. So he used the technology of the 1950s to enable that. But just as people use shadow puppets and cave paintings to try and help people be in the experience with them, to simulate what it was like or what they saw. So, these things have been with us for a long time, but we are getting to the point where, they are starting to impact. There's a triangle that I like to teach my students. At the very top is science fiction. And then below it is research. That's the world of what if. And then comes the defense layer as the pyramid goes down. And, they're saying, well, what if I could blow stuff up? Which is always the first instinct of man, is not to build, but to destroy. So what if I could blow stuff up? And blowing stuff up is super expensive. But then you get into the layer of, the technology has started to spread out now. It's come off of the peak. There's enough industrial experience with it through the defense industry that it starts to be afforded by enterprises for other purposes. Right. So, great example is, Velcro coming through all the way down through NASA, and suddenly ending up on kids' sneakers, or on ski jackets. It's sort of invisible to most people. So AR and VR are kind of like that, right? Where we're at the point now where we're seeing a lot of deployment on the enterprise layer. And it's still very beginning of that as well. Right. So anybody providing enterprise XR services, there's room for 1 million companies to do that. But also there's a context for that, which is the digital transformation of the enterprise. So you can't hold AR and VR in this sort of box that's apart from that, especially at a phase now as it's spreading out in the pyramid. And of course, consumers underneath that, and we're starting to see, VR starting to convert that, and being able to reach that consumer market, thanks to Facebook being willing to take it on the chin and, sell it below cost, just like they used to give away the razors in order to sell the blades. And so, there's a lot of credit that should accrue to Facebook, but also to Sony, which are the two companies that made the VR industry up to this point. Rest in peace, the pioneers whose bodies are buried by the side of the trail, so to speak. But, we're getting to the phase now where we're sort of colonizing and there are affordable devices and, devices now that, are sold based on their capabilities. So it is becoming more sophisticated market with products all the way through from, people who are, designing cars to the most minute detail to people who are, playing games or doing remote collaboration with people with whom they cannot be together because of COVID or distance or whatever. I do think that, VR, the killer app of VR is presence, the ability to be present somewhere else. And I'm not sure that really had a value before this pandemic set in. Right? Because you were present wherever you went. Well, what's the problem with presence? There is no scarcity of presence. There is no presence problem that needed to be solved. But of course, now there is, right? Because we want to be together, but we have to be apart. So, suddenly VR is starting to make sense. You explain to less and less people what the use case of it is, because everybody immediately understands that they would like to be present with, not just remote places, but people. People are the killer app.
Right.
And that's, to me, the secret sauce of VR is, presence, remote presence, but not just remote presence, like on a desert island. Who cares about that? You care about being there with someone else. That kind of presence where you are co-present. That's what creates a reality, is two people believing that they see an apple, and they see it the same. The apple has substance. It is apparent to both of them. So that's presence. Nobody thought they had a scarcity of it. But, it was sort of like, well, why would I want that? If that's the killer app, then you got nothing. But now it's everything.
Exactly. Yeah. The world has completely changed. And you brought up some interesting points. The first movers, there is obviously, this entire industry is on the shoulders of those first movers who toiled, and spent their resources and energy in building this ecosystem. And yes, not everyone had been lucky, because the first movers, it always comes with advantages and disadvantages. There are people, like you said, who have had to give up, and respect to them for doing what they're doing, and they've taking this journey so far, and making it a reality. Because I believe that all of these future technologies is only and only and only meant for those bold, visionary, passionate people who break out from the traditional and are brave enough to step out and have foresight and do things which others are not doing or afraid of doing, because it comes with so many challenges and difficulties, because we are as a society, we are so dependent on economics. And when somebody,
this is why young people do it, right? Because they don't know any better. They throw themselves at the new.
But isn't that the society? Your parents, when at least in India, when you have a child, as a parent is forcing the kid to become a doctor or an engineer, not understanding what the kid wants to become, because he needs to be economically. And then you end up becoming this frustrated individual who's got money but doesn't is completely frustrated with life. So yes, but I really respect those people who are building this ecosystem, block by block. You mentioned about Facebook, and if not for Facebook, there are a lot of people who bring down Facebook for those various things that they have done. And I would obviously point out there has been some rights and some wrongs, but when it comes to building the VR ecosystem. I think Facebook has been at the forefront. Magic Leap was at the forefront. But
Magic Leap was in the forefront of marketing ideas. They never could productize it, but they did a great service to augmented reality because most people's were first exposed to it and exposed to the larger idea of wearable computing because of Magic Leap.
Exactly. They
went first. Everybody gets to piggyback on the work that they did.
Exactly. So it's so very easy to pull down. Oh, they didn't have a product and they were so well funded, but they had the vision to at least, because of Magic Leap, the world got to know about AR. So more respect to them. And so I'm excited for this space. Now, COVID somehow has been a catalyst. All the emerging technology, which was on a creeping mechanism, has suddenly got accelerated, and the entire world, the governance or the institutions, enterprise now suddenly is talking about digital transformation. Yes. Do you believe that this is a momentary phase, and as soon as things come back to normal, we are going to go back to the way we lived our life, or the world is completely changed from here?
This is normal. Why is this not normal? Does a bell get rung and then we're normal? I mean, I expect before, I'll get vaccinated and, I'll go back to work at the university, but it won't be the same. I won't be anxious to sit down at a full table in the faculty dining room when there's an empty table over there where I can sit down with my smartphone in my mask and read the news. I mean, it's going to change a lot of things. It's going to change the relationship between people. That's going to change people's, we've already become more of a shut-in society. We don't even want to go near each other on the sidewalk. I mean, that's not changing. That's not going to change when everybody's got a vaccine. I mean, like I said, things play out over decades, but I don't think that there's some big magical change that's going to happen. I think gradually things will get better because there will be a vaccine, but I don't think that you go back to the old. I think people are going to be walking around wearing masks for decades now.
At this point in time, it's pure speculation, but we really don't know what the world is going to be. But yes, everything is changed. You have written the book, Remote Collaboration and Virtual Conferences in the Future of Work. Now, virtual reality as a tool has got all the capabilities built in for remote work, remote healthcare, remote education. So everything which was like, which you used to talk about right now and suddenly at the forefront. Now, Microsoft has done something really, really amazing. Google, Facebook has given the entire staff like a work from home option till maybe July 2021. But Microsoft has been the only company which has given a work from home option forever for almost 40 or 50% of the workforce. Now, this could be either a game changer because today the world, any part of the world has become so complicated that, you getting out from your home to getting to the office is a stressful thing because, you get in the car, you're stuck in the traffic for hours.
You can reclaim a lot of hours and a lot of dollars.
Right.
And certainly for certain people, they give the company a lot more time as a result. For certain people, particularly people with families, it's hellish. There is no work space for them. So I also think there's certain kind of engineering roles and other roles in big companies that can be remote. But if people want to be promoted, if you want to rise in an organization, I don't know how you do that without mentorship and building relationships. And mentorship is not something you set out to do. Mentorship is something that happens because of proximity and repetition. So there are uses for the office. right? The best ideas I've ever in my life, I wanted to think for many years it was because of my innate genius, but it was more of a genius for collaboration and for riffing on other people and understanding, being in an idea flow. So I don't know that that's so easily replicated.
Right.
But I'm not also sure, but I also know that even though it's not so easily replicated, that the world is different and that's not going to be how it works. But how is it going to work then? What's the alternative? I don't know. We're humans, we're resourceful, we'll no doubt come up with solutions that probably are no better, but they reflect the real reality that we're just not going to be together with the kind of frequency we used to have. So we're going to have to, find other ways of doing the things we used to do. I always tell my students are always like, well, I'm going to miss the campus experience. It's like, that is right. The campus experience as you knew it is going to be gone for years if it ever comes back. And that really sucks for you. Sorry. Thanks for playing. It was an unlucky year. You were in the year of the crap.
Yeah.
And you was out on college or even just be in high school remotely, which is very difficult because people are at a very social age of their lives, and they need the company of their peers. And it is, very isolating and difficult for families to be together like that with no end in sight. So, I don't think that the world just snaps back to being normal after that, if normal is decided by what the world was like in 2019. So it's unfortunate. I miss many things about the real, but here we are. I was just telling somebody today about the story of when, I was around when we were sort of starting the internet in 1993, 94, 95, when I went to AOL, and there really was no there. But there were a few fundamental things that were driving us. One was the belief that now there were no gatekeepers, right? Now there would be nothing to stifle the truth, that the truth would be everywhere. And, I work with very smart people, some of the smartest people in the world. I mean, Ted Leonsis, Mark Andreessen, Steve Case, Jerry Levin. And, these were the technology superheroes of the, late 90s. And it never once occurred to any of us. I never heard anybody say, that yes, the truth will set us free, but so lies will be set free also. Yes, you cannot suppress the truth, but you also will not be able to suppress lies. Not one person ever said that. It's kind of astonishing, right? I mean, it didn't occur to anybody. But then you think about Facebook, right? Who thought that the algorithms that were supposed to help their clients sell more t-shirts and shampoo might eventually subvert democracy?
Right.
Not a single person thought that. And I would hate them for that, except my generation and my cohorts made the same darn mistake. So whatever technology jumps forward, so it will unleash a wave of unintended consequences. And hopefully our institutions will be resilient enough to control that.
You have been one of the industry insider. You have access to some of the top players who are building this technology. You have interviewed some of the top startups. So could you kind of like, from your perspective, give us a kind of prediction of what's coming in 2021 and beyond for AR, VR, and MR? How excited we should be, what are the steps an enterprise should be, and the cons of this technology once it starts maturing?
So with AR, it's a little hard to say. I mean, I will say this, I'm not a big believer in AR headwear, but I do think this these glasses could be disrupted. You could have better glasses, right? There's no reason I can't have glasses that don't know what time of day it is or what activity I'm doing, right? Whether I'm reading in the dark or driving in sunlight. And they should be able to adjust my prescription as well as the tinting of my glasses pretty instantaneously, because it's using retinal detection and knows what's happening with my pupils. So it should be quite smart. And of course, it should get smarter as you use it, and learn the subtleties and also the nuances of the wearer. So that, to me, would be a tremendous leap for augmented reality. Then now you've got VR. I mean, VR is really getting very mature. And I think it is going to be in our lives in a big way for training and education. And there will be a layer that there will be a lot of people using them to play games and play social games. And they'll be used for concerts. A concert will have 1,000 premium seats in person, and then an unlimited of seats in virtual inventory. So I think we may see these expressions in live entertainment very quickly. Also, by the way, how many people have $300 to go to a concert of their favorite artist? Right, but if the concert were on Fortnite and your fee was 10 cents, you could get 47 million fans of that artist to attend. So these economies are going to change. But it's these kind of hybrids that I think we're going to be seeing over the next 5-10 years, right? More things that are virtual, but they're not really virtual, they're hybrid. They can be virtual, but they're also live, where they can be in VR, but they're mostly on a smartphone. So I think those kinds of, because you got to meet people where they are, right? And so for the time being, most people are on the smartphone, and that's kind of sucky for VR and AR, but it is reality. And I do think that the AR capabilities of the smartphone we're only scratching the surface right now. Right. So again, I think there's the potential but again, I don't think that there is an AR app, and that's something that confuses people, right? There's no AR app. AR is a quality that better apps have. I don't think it's, so I don't think it's this standalone thing, I don't like AR. Or AR isn't interesting to me. It doesn't matter. It's part of the apps you use every day when it is called for.
I see a world where maybe a wearable device like this converging everything. Right now we've given it different names: augmented reality, virtual reality, mixed reality. It'll be like a one device which you kind of like tap on, and it'll give you all of those kind of experiences. Yeah. So you have.
I think that device for consumers is a long way off.
Yeah. Right.
You get consumers into VR, and VR will be more of a beachhead for mixed reality than a consumer glasses.
Right.
So, I think that being interrupted, visually is not, look, we have to bring our heads up. We're switching back and forth between the visual and the digital, the physical and the digital all day long. It's a very bad form factor, obviously. But I don't know that the solution is the cell phone on your face.
Right.
I've seen people doing things with, the iWatch, which are really interesting. I think this has got a long way to go. But the problem right now with the technology is that there's just too much friction.
Right.
Even for VR, for most people. And we were joking before, right, about reality. But I'm telling you, I take people through VR all the time for big corporations. And the first thing they say is, wait, what? It's a cartoon? Like, wait, I thought it was reality. Everything is a cartoon.
Right.
Yeah, about that. Um, it's hard to know what to say to them because we've done ourselves a huge disservice as an industry because we're promising something that doesn't exist in our medium. The word reality creates extreme expectations that are not going to be met. Maybe it'll be met in my lifetime. We'll see. I'm not optimistic that reality is going to be in virtual reality really soon.
Yes, completely agreed that there is so many problems, but I'm excited because if you see, there are these various subsets of technologies kind of trying to figure out in their ways to kind of create a cohesive virtual world. There are people who are working on haptic feedback. There are people who are exploring nanotechnology. There is people who explore brain-computer interface. So I feel maybe I'm a little over-optimistic that maybe in 2 decades time or under that, we will have virtual worlds which will definitely be challenging what reality is. And if and only if the progress of artificial intelligence, which is growing, we could leverage that and accelerate all advances in R&D and kind of build these virtual worlds which would trick a perception. So I maybe this is a little far out and into the future, but I'm excited. But the immediate future, you've written a book called Metaverse, spatial computing, that's a big deal. Would you like to talk about spatial computing and how it's going to impact us?
Oh, sure. Well, the world is becoming increasingly 3D, and certainly 5G, and the advanced wireless technology is going to usher in that age. We're going to have lower latency and more resolution and more ability to move around inside space. I was just talking to somebody earlier today about LiDAR, and LiDAR scans versus photogrammetry. And, LiDAR, like photogrammetry, but in a real-time way, detects and can photograph the depth of things and the space of things. We've always, valued in the past 200 years the reflection of things, but we haven't put those things into a spatial context. So now something that is far away can literally be far away. Whereas before, they're compressed, and especially with the, different kinds of lenses that we're used to seeing objects through, suddenly, all of that has the potential to be transformed.
So what, I asked you this question earlier also, but this has to be my last question because, I want it to come out of your mouth because, there are people who follow you. Where do you see virtual reality, augmented reality, mixed reality in the next couple of years and in this decade?
Well, I think in the next few years, I think it's going to continue to evolve as a consumer medium, and just enterprise and education adoption of it will really start to accelerate. I think I don't think it's crazy to think in 5 years or 7 years that you will see virtual reality reaching the scale that has reached game consoles. So, 40, 50, 70, 90 million headsets is not a crazy idea based on today's technology. And what will people be doing? Well, they'll be doing work stuff, and they'll be doing play stuff, and they'll be doing shopping and all the things that they do in real life. And certainly the science fiction things that we have talked about, like people preferring that experience to reality, will certainly be true, as will the statement I made earlier that there will be negative consequences that we haven't even yet anticipated.
Right.
So all of those things will be true. The world is changing very, very quickly now.
Lovely.
shows no signs of slowing down. So that means that certainly VR this is a great time to be in spatial computing because it's an open field, and the demand for people who understand spatial computing and can use its tools like game engines is going to go through the roof. I think it's sort of the majority of new jobs will be people who can do that. I think the old kind of jobs are in decline. And so people need to learn this. That's one thing about being an educator right now and teaching this is that, this is the new handwriting. If you want to be relevant, just in the same way that students today have to be computer literate, in 10 years, they will have to be spatial.
Right. Charlie, what a note to end on. And thank you for sharing your insights.
Sure, my pleasure.
I am so excited on the space because you rightfully said, I think we are in a full paradigm shift. In the next 10 years, this could be the future. And as somebody who's either a student, or enterprise, or building businesses, I think we should have a foresight because the world is changing. And if we start looking at these tools or technology which has potential to shape our future, and if we are not looking at it, then unfortunately we're going to be left behind. So my thing is, the reason I do this is because I'm trying to make people understand that this is the tool which is going to create a huge transformation. And somehow,
you want to hear something unbelievable that I always tell my students?
Yeah.
You can teach yourself online following a course how to have one of the most lucrative jobs of the coming century. You can, spend 2 hours a day learning Unity, and in a year you can have $100,000 a year job.
Yeah, it's so basic, but it's so profound. And you
could do it with a smartphone.
Exactly. Yeah, lovely. Thank you, Charlie. It was a pleasure and honor to talk to you. Wish you the very best for whatever you're doing. Keep doing whatever you're doing because we need more people like you. And to my listeners, if you like what you see in here, please press the subscribe button. Until next time, see you guys. Bye bye. Thank you, Charlie. Really appreciate this.
Thank you.